The Oregon Ducks, I think, are in a situation where they are expecting to be in a Big Ten championship. They are expecting to be in a college football playoff, that type of 10-plus win type of discussion every single year. And coming off of a year where they went 12-0 in the regular season, winning the Big Ten championship before losing in the quarterfinals to the Ohio State Buckeyes, a fantastic season. And I think as you look forward to this 2025 season, I think a big reason specifically offensively why they believe that this was going to be another great season was because of one of the bigger producers at the wide receiver position was slated to come back and play a big role. Emphasize was. Late last week on Friday, we learned that wide receiver Evan Stewart suffered what appears to be a torn patella tendon in his knee. Timetable was 3 to 12 months. Sounds like it was just like a freak deal on a 7-on-7 drill. And your heart breaks certainly for Evan Stewart right now because, man, this was supposed to be his bridge year. This was supposed to be his bridge year to the NFL draft. He's had really good production, whether it's at Texas A&M or this last year at Oregon. He's been in that 400, 500, 600, yard type of range. And I think this year was the year that Evan was really slated to break out to be a 1,000-yard receiver on this team. And it appears that is not going to be the case, obviously, this season. Now, he's kind of dealt with some injuries in the past. During the Rose Bowl, he was not available. I believe that was due to a back injury during spring practice. I believe it was a separate injury that he had. He didn't play in the spring game. It was kind of held out a little bit during practice, and then you've got this injury. So now all of a sudden these injuries are stacking up. So if you look at maybe his NFL future, that might be a little bit of a question mark. So you could see Evan Stewart use his redshirt this year and then come back for the 2026 season. Now, ask a lot of people around Oregon circles. That 2026 season is one that got circled as maybe they're going to turn the 0 into a 1. Maybe make a run for their first national title. And that was a year where you were slated to not have Evan Stewart. I know when you have a knee injury, especially a guy that really emphasizes his cutting ability and his speed as much as Evan does, it can usually slow down a guy. Guys maybe aren't usually the same. But if you can get a pretty good version of Evan Stewart for 2026, along with maybe a second-year starting quarterback in Dante Moore, DeCorian Moore, and maybe some of these other guys coming back to make a run towards a chip, now you have Evan on that team. Hey, it's a little bit of positivity. It may be a negative situation. It's a little bit of a silver lining, I think, as it stands right now. But the big question is, what's next? Okay? It happened. It sucks. He was slated to be really one of your big-time playmakers on this Ducks offense this year, but now Oregon has to look to the future. I think now expectations turn into pressure for the Super Frosh DeCorian Moore, the number one wide receiver in the 2025 class that Oregon was able to get. One of the highest-rated recruits, maybe the highest-rated recruit that Oregon has ever gotten. Certainly the best wide receiver talent that they've really ever brought in to that program. Because DeCorian he was expected to be in that wide receiver 2 type of role at the very least. Maybe he'd work his way up to wide receiver 1 as the season went on. But you had Evan Stewart on the other side. Right, so there was expectation for him to be really good, considering, and then people looked at what Ryan Williams did last year. They looked what Jeremiah Smith did last year, and they were expecting to maybe DeCorian Moore to continue in that type of trend. Now, all of a sudden, without a proven commodity like Evan Stewart on the other side, now all of a sudden expectations turn into pressure. Now you got to be the number one guy from day one. I think with Stewart on the other side, there was a period where it's hey, he can kind of mold into this offense and mold into what his role specifically is going to be. Now it's hey, you got to be that guy. You got to be that dude from day number 1. And he could very well be that guy from day number 1. And this could be kind of a non-point. And maybe this was going to be DeCorian Moore's year anyway. Maybe this was going to be the year where he was really going to step up and show the world exactly that hype is true. But now he's certainly going to be on that island out there. There's going to be a lot more pressure on him. And we'll see what's on the other side of him, because coming into spring, that wide receiver 3 battle was wide open. It was wide open for the Oregon Ducks. Now it's wide receiver 2. Now it's wide receiver 3. I'm kind of trying to trend some positivity here for the Duck faithful right now. I think if there is a little bit of a silver lining, it's the timing of this happening in June as opposed to happening halfway through fall camp, because now I think the coaching staff can evaluate. They can evaluate what they saw in spring. They can evaluate who really stepped up, who really has an opportunity to play alongside DeCorian Moore and really make this offense as good as it can be, certainly. Another guy to certainly keep an eye on is one of my favorite tight ends in college football. It's Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq is a fantastic football player. He can play out wide. He can play in the slot. He can play at the traditional tight end position. He's a unicorn. He's extremely athletic. I think you're going to see a lot more targets come his way. Whereas maybe before he'd be like a number 3 option, now he's going to be like a number 1 or a number 2 option, I think, on a lot of plays. I think that they're going to get a lot more diverse, certainly with him. I think we could see him split out wide, whether it's in the slot or near the boundary, a lot more than I think was previously thought last year. So, like, there are still, I mean, it's Oregon. Like, when you have a program like this, it's if you fancy yourself a championship level program, you got to have that next man up mentality. You say, hey, we've recruited extremely well. There are guys that can step up into these roles, and I believe that there are guys that are going to step up into these roles. But Evan Stewart was maybe expected to be a 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think one guy is going to all of a sudden pop in and be a 1,000-yard receiver at the wide receiver position. It might be a couple of guys. Now, one guy that I really have my eye on is a former 5-star himself, is Jurion Dickey. Now, he's dealt with some injury issues. He's dealt with maybe some weight issues as well. That's been thrown around. But I think a reset in the wide receiver room at the wide receiver coach, new wide receivers coach Ross Douglas, coming into this team, I think is going to help him. I was able to kind of talk to somebody that had their eyeballs on spring practice. They said Jurion Dickey looked like he was well on his way to kind of being a new guy. Looked like he was well on his way to having the best spring that he's ever had so far. And now if they can get him to getting close to realizing that 5-star potential, realizing that 5-star ceiling, all of a sudden that makes things a lot better. Oregon, I believe, is going to be, because Evan Stewart was a veteran option of sorts in that room. I think you're really going to lean on veterans Gary Bryant Jr., who in the Bo Nix season in 2023, I think he had over 500 yards receiving that year and was a decent-sized part to that offense that year. Big game against Arizona State that specific season. About Justice Lowe, a guy who came in the absence of guys like when Tez Johnson was out, when Trayshawn Holden was out last season. I think these veterans are going to be asked to step into a bigger role. And then, like, Malik Benson, a transfer from by way of Alabama and Florida State. Okay? Like, this is a guy that was formerly the number 1 junior college player in the country. Like, now this is his opportunity to really step up into a big-time role for this Oregon offense right now. Like, and then you go like a Jeremiah McClellan, who was like a 4-star, top 150 player in the class a couple of years ago, certainly. Kyler Casper has been waiting in the wings. Like, there is a lot of players. There's a lot of players in this room, but they need, like, 2 players to really take a big-time step forward. There is enough depth in this room for them to be lethal. But I think that this room needs to be, I think it already was going to be deeper, but I think it needs to be a lot deeper. You need more guys that you can rely on in key spots to be able to go out there and make plays. I can't wait to see what this Oregon offense truly, truly looks like in 2025.